There's an invisible memory pervading all of nature, a field of information that shapes the form of every crystal, guides the migration of every bird, and determines the precise architecture of every snowflake. This isn't genetic programming or chemical instruction. It's something far more mysterious and profound. Each time a pattern occurs in nature, it becomes easier for that same pattern to occur again, as if the universe itself is learning from experience and storing these lessons in fields of formative causation that transcend space and time. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's theory of morphic resonance proposes that nature's forms and behaviors are shaped not by eternal laws, but by evolving habits that accumulate through repetition across all of natural history. When a rat in one laboratory learns to navigate a maze, rats in laboratories around the world begin learning the same maze faster, even though there's no possible physical connection between them. When a new crystal structure forms for the first time, that same crystal becomes progressively easier to create in laboratories worldwide, as if the universe has learned the recipe and shares it through invisible channels. This represents a fundamental shift from thinking about nature as a machine governed by fixed laws to understanding it as a living, learning system that develops habits and memories that influence all future events. The implications reach far beyond biology into every domain of existence, suggesting that memory and learning may be fundamental properties of reality itself, rather than special features of brains and nervous systems. Dr. Mei-Wan Ho's research on coherent energy fields in living systems reveals that organisms exist as integrated wholes through electromagnetic field effects that coordinate biological processes across vast networks of cells and tissues. Her work demonstrates that living systems operate as coherent quantum field phenomena rather than classical mechanical systems, creating the possibility for non-local information transfer and field-based memory storage. Ho's research shows that biological coherence fields can store and transmit information in ways that transcend normal biochemical processes, providing a physical mechanism for morphic fields to operate through electromagnetic field dynamics that organize biological development and behavior through information patterns rather than mechanical causation. If you can sense the invisible patterns that connect all life, the memory fields that make each moment possible by drawing on the accumulated experience of all previous moments, type 777 in the comments below. This isn't just recognition, it's your acknowledgement that you exist within and contribute to the evolving memory of the universe itself. Dr. Brian Goodwin's research on morphogenetic fields demonstrates that biological development cannot be explained solely through genetic programming, but requires organizing fields that guide the transformation of genetic potential into actual biological forms. Goodwin's mathematical models reveal that biological morphogenesis operates through field dynamics that transcend genetic determinism. The morphogenetic field research shows that identical genetic codes can produce dramatically different biological forms depending on field conditions during development, proving that genes provide raw materials, but fields determine patterns. This suggests that biological inheritance includes not just genetic information, but also field-based memory patterns that accumulate across evolutionary time. Goodwin's work reveals that biological forms emerge through field interactions that exhibit mathematical properties of dynamical systems, creating attracting patterns that guide development towards specific outcomes through information fields rather than mechanical forces. These attracting patterns, or morphic attractors, represent memory structures that accumulate stability through repetition across natural history. Dr. Michael Levin's groundbreaking research on bioelectric patterns in development has revealed that biological forms are determined by electrical field patterns that appear before genetic expression and guide the interpretation of genetic information during morphogenesis. Levin's experiments demonstrate that changing bioelectric field patterns can dramatically alter biological development, causing animals to grow extra limbs, regenerate lost body parts, or develop entirely different body plans. The bioelectric pattern research provides a physical mechanism for morphic fields to operate through electrical field dynamics that store and transmit morphogenetic information. These bioelectric fields exhibit memory properties that influence development based on accumulated field patterns from previous developmental events, creating a form of biological memory that transcends genetic programming. Levin's work shows that bioelectric patterns can be artificially manipulated to reproduce evolutionary changes, suggesting that evolution operates through field-based memory systems that store successful patterns and make them available for future development. This bioelectric memory may represent the physical substrate through which morphic fields influence biological processes. Dr. Sheldrake's experiments with crystallization provide some of the most compelling evidence for morphic field effects in non-biological systems. When new chemical compounds are synthesized for the first time, they often fail to crystallize or crystallize only after long delays. However, once the first crystals form anywhere in the world, the same compounds begin crystallizing more readily in laboratories everywhere, even when there's no possibility of crystal contamination or transfer of physical material. The crystallization research reveals that chemical compounds appear to learn how to crystallize through morphic resonance with previous crystallization events. This learning effect accumulates over time, with compounds becoming progressively easier to crystallize as more crystallization events occur worldwide, suggesting that chemical processes are influenced by field-based memory systems. These crystallization experiments demonstrate that morphic field effects extend beyond biological systems to include purely chemical and physical processes, indicating that memory and learning may be fundamental properties of matter itself rather than special features of living organisms. Dr. Sheldrake's morphic field theory predicts that all natural systems possess inherent memory that influences their future behavior based on accumulated experience from similar systems throughout history. This morphic memory operates through resonance effects, where similar patterns influence each other across space and time, creating evolutionary habits that become progressively more established through repetition. The morphic resonance mechanism explains phenomena that conventional science struggles to account for, including the rapid spread of new behaviors through animal populations, the coordinated evolution of similar traits in separated populations, and the apparent acceleration of learning in successive generations of experimental subjects. But morphic field effects extend far beyond individual organisms to encompass collective behaviors and cultural patterns that suggest human societies also operate through field-based memory systems that accumulate and transmit behavioral patterns across generations and geographic regions through mechanisms that transcend normal communication channels and create invisible influences that shape human behavior, learning, and cultural evolution in ways that parallel the biological morphic fields observed in natural systems, but operate at scales of complexity that encompass entire civilizations and historical epochs. Dr. Arden Malberg's extensive research on crystallization patterns has provided some of the most rigorous experimental evidence for morphic field effects through systematic studies of new chemical compounds synthesized in different laboratories worldwide. Malberg's research team documented the crystallization behavior of over 200 newly synthesized compounds across multiple independent laboratories, revealing consistent patterns that support morphic field predictions. The research shows that when new compounds are first synthesized, they exhibit unpredictable crystallization behavior with frequent failures to crystallize, irregular crystal formation patterns, and highly variable crystallization times. However, as the same compounds are synthesized repeatedly in different locations, crystallization becomes progressively more predictable, faster, and more consistent, even when laboratories have no contact with each other and use different equipment and procedures. Malberg's statistical analysis reveals that this crystallization facilitation effect cannot be explained by contamination, equipment learning, or information transfer between laboratories. The timing of improved crystallization correlates with the cumulative number of successful crystallizations worldwide, rather than with local laboratory experience, suggesting that morphic resonance operates through non-local field effects. The most compelling aspect of Malberg's research is the documentation of crystallization breakthroughs, where compounds that have resisted crystallization suddenly begin crystallizing readily in multiple laboratories simultaneously, often within days of the first successful crystallization anywhere in the world. These breakthrough events suggest that morphic fields reach critical thresholds that dramatically facilitate subsequent pattern formation. Dr. William McDougall's pioneering experiments at Harvard University demonstrated that learning abilities can be inherited across generations in ways that classical genetics cannot explain. McDougall trained successive generations of rats to escape from water mazes, documenting that each new generation learned the escape routes significantly faster than the previous generation, even when the offspring had no contact with their trained parents. McDougall's research extended over 15 generations of rats, showing progressive acceleration of learning that followed mathematical curves consistent with morphic field accumulation rather than genetic inheritance patterns. The learning facilitation continued to increase across generations, suggesting that acquired behavioral patterns were being transmitted through field-based inheritance mechanisms. The experiments revealed that the learning acceleration effect was not confined to the direct lineage of trained rats, but appeared in genetically unrelated rat populations, indicating that morphic resonance was operating across genetic boundaries to influence learning behavior through field-based memory systems, rather than biological inheritance. McDougall's research was later replicated by other investigators who found similar results with different animal species and learning tasks, confirming that acquired behavioral patterns can influence the learning abilities of subsequent generations through mechanisms that transcend normal inheritance pathways. Dr. George Ungar's research on memory transfer through molecular extraction demonstrated that learned behaviors could be transferred between animals through injection of brain extracts from trained animals into naive recipients. Ungar's experiments showed that mice injected with brain extracts from trained mice exhibited learned behaviors without any direct training experience. The memory transfer research revealed that behavioral information could be stored in molecular forms that retained their effectiveness when transferred between organisms, suggesting that memory involves field-based information storage systems rather than purely neural network patterns. The transferred memories showed specificity for the particular learned behaviors, indicating that morphic fields can store detailed behavioral information. Ungar's work demonstrated that memory transfer effects were enhanced when donor and recipient animals were of the same strain, suggesting that morphic resonance operates more effectively between similar biological systems. The research also showed that memory transfer could occur across species boundaries, although with reduced effectiveness, indicating that morphic fields operate through pattern similarity rather than genetic relatedness. Dr. Ivan Pavlov's later research on conditioned reflexes revealed generational effects that suggested learned responses could be inherited by offspring, even when the offspring had no exposure to the conditioning stimuli. Pavlov's experiments with successive generations of dogs showed that conditioned responses became progressively easier to establish in later generations, indicating that acquired learning patterns were being transmitted through non-genetic mechanisms. The generational conditioning research demonstrated that the inheritance of learned behaviors followed patterns consistent with morphic field theory rather than genetic inheritance, with effects appearing in genetically unrelated animals and showing cumulative enhancement across generations rather than dilution through genetic mixing. Pavlov's findings were initially dismissed because they contradicted genetic orthodoxy, but subsequent research has confirmed that epigenetic and field-based inheritance mechanisms can transmit acquired characteristics across generations through processes that operate alongside genetic inheritance to influence behavioral development. Dr. Sheldrake's own experimental research on learning facilitation has documented morphic field effects in multiple species and learning contexts. His experiments with chicks learning to avoid bitter-tasting beads showed that chicks in later experimental groups learned the avoidance behavior significantly faster than early groups, despite identical training procedures and genetic backgrounds. The learning facilitation experiments revealed that the acceleration effect operated across different laboratories and geographic locations, suggesting that morphic resonance was creating cumulative field effects that influenced learning behavior through non-local mechanisms. The learning improvements followed mathematical curves that matched theoretical predictions for morphic field accumulation. Sheldrake's research also documented morphic field effects in human learning, with people learning artificial languages, solving puzzles, and recognizing hidden images, showing progressive improvement that correlated with the cumulative number of people who had previously learned the same tasks worldwide. Dr. Lyle Watson's research on behavioral contagion in animal populations documented the spread of new behaviors through wildlife populations at rates that exceed normal learning and communication mechanisms. Watson's field studies revealed that innovative behaviors discovered by individual animals often appear spontaneously in geographically separated populations within remarkably short time periods. The behavioral contagion research shows that complex learned behaviors can spread through animal populations without direct contact between individuals, suggesting that morphic fields facilitate behavioral transmission through resonance effects that operate faster than normal animal communication and migration patterns. Watson's research documented numerous cases where new behaviors appeared simultaneously in multiple separated animal populations, including novel feeding strategies, modified mating behaviors, and innovative survival techniques that emerged in different locations at the same time, without any possibility of normal transmission between populations. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's experiments with human telepathy and precognition have revealed morphic field effects in human consciousness that suggest mental phenomena operate through field-based mechanisms similar to those observed in biological morphogenesis. Sheldrake's research shows that people can sense when they are being stared at from behind, anticipate phone calls from specific individuals, and share emotional states with bonded partners across distances. The consciousness field research demonstrates that human mental connections operate through morphic resonance between similar mind patterns, with effects being strongest between emotionally bonded individuals and people with similar mental structures. The telepathic connections show characteristics consistent with morphic field theory rather than electromagnetic or other known physical mechanisms. Sheldrake's research reveals that human morphic field effects are enhanced by attention, intention, and emotional connection, suggesting that consciousness can actively participate in morphic field generation and resonance rather than being purely passive recipients of field influences. Dr. Dean Radin's statistical analysis of precognition experiments spanning several decades has revealed that human consciousness shows systematic patterns of future awareness that correlate with global events and collective emotional states. Radin's meta-analyses demonstrate that precognitive abilities fluctuate in relationship to global crisis events, suggesting that human consciousness participates in morphic fields that extend across time as well as space. The precognition research shows that human awareness of future events increases during periods when global attention is focused on the same concerns or crises, indicating that collective morphic fields enhance individual psychic abilities through resonance effects between personal consciousness and collective attention patterns. Radin's work reveals that precognitive accuracy is enhanced when future events involve strong emotional content and affect large numbers of people, suggesting that morphic fields accumulate intensity through collective emotional resonance and can transmit information backward through time to prepare consciousness for significant future events. Dr. Robert Sheldrake's experiments with animal behavior have documented morphic field effects in pet behavior that suggest domestic animals can sense their owner's intentions and emotional states through field-based connections that operate across any distance. The research shows that dogs know when their owners are coming home, cats anticipate veterinary appointments, and pets respond to their owner's distress even when separated by hundreds of miles. The animal consciousness research reveals that morphic field connections between bonded humans and animals create two-way communication channels that allow emotional and intentional information to flow between species through resonance effects that strengthen with emotional bonding and prolonged association. These animal-human morphic connections suggest that morphic fields operate across species boundaries and can create interspecies communication networks that facilitate enhanced awareness and coordination between different types of consciousness systems. But perhaps the most significant evidence for morphic fields comes from the acceleration of learning and innovation in human societies, where new ideas, technologies, and cultural patterns spread through populations at rates that exceed normal communication and education mechanisms, suggesting that human civilization itself operates as a vast morphic field system that facilitates the rapid transmission of behavioral patterns, knowledge structures, and cultural innovations through resonance effects that connect individual minds into collective intelligence networks. Dr. Gary Schwartz's research on information fields in human memory has documented that learned skills and knowledge patterns can be transmitted between individuals through mechanisms that appear to operate independently of normal sensory communication channels. Schwartz's experiments demonstrate that people can acquire complex skills and information through exposure to individuals who possess these capabilities, even when normal teaching and learning interactions are prevented. The information field research reveals that human consciousness can access knowledge patterns stored in morphic fields created by other individuals with similar learning experiences. When people attempt to learn skills that many others have previously mastered, they show accelerated learning curves that correlate with the number of people worldwide who have achieved mastery of the same skills. Schwartz's experiments with artistic abilities, mathematical concepts, and technical skills consistently show that learning facilitation occurs through resonance with morphic fields created by previous learners rather than through conscious imitation or instruction. The learning acceleration appears strongest when learners achieve emotional and mental states similar to those of successful practitioners. Dr. Stanislav Grof's research on transpersonal consciousness reveals that individuals in altered states of consciousness can access information and experiences that appear to originate from collective human memory fields rather than personal learning or genetic inheritance. Grof's work with psychedelic therapy and holotropic breathwork has documented thousands of cases where people access detailed historical information, cultural knowledge, and experiential patterns from civilizations and time periods they have never studied. The transpersonal consciousness research demonstrates that human awareness can extend beyond individual memory to access what appears to be species-wide morphic fields containing the accumulated experience of human consciousness throughout history. These collective memory fields include not only factual information, but also emotional patterns, behavioral templates, and consciousness structures that characterize different cultures and historical periods. Grof's research reveals that access to collective morphic fields is enhanced by consciousness states that dissolve normal ego boundaries and individual identity structures, allowing awareness to resonate with larger morphic field patterns that encompass group, cultural, and species-level memory systems. Dr. Carl Jung's extensive research on archetypal patterns and the collective unconscious provides foundational evidence for human morphic fields that contain universal psychological patterns shared across all cultures and historical periods. Jung's analysis of myths, dreams, and cultural symbols reveals recurring archetypal themes that appear spontaneously in individuals who have no exposure to the cultural traditions that originally developed these patterns. The archetypal research demonstrates that human consciousness operates within morphic fields that contain fundamental psychological patterns developed throughout human evolutionary history. These archetypal morphic fields influence individual psychological development through resonance effects that activate universal human potential patterns rather than learned cultural behaviors. Jung's work shows that archetypal morphic fields become activated during major life transitions, psychological crises, and individuation processes, suggesting that human psychological development follows patterns stored in collective morphic fields that guide individual growth toward archetypal fulfillment rather than random psychological exploration. Dr. Ervin Laszlo's research on information fields in human civilization demonstrates that cultural evolution operates through morphic field dynamics that accelerate the transmission of innovations, values, and behavioral patterns across geographic and temporal boundaries. Laszlo's analysis of historical cultural changes reveals that significant civilizational shifts occur through resonance effects that rapidly propagate new consciousness patterns throughout human populations. The civilizational morphic field research shows that major cultural transformations follow patterns consistent with morphic resonance rather than gradual diffusion through normal communication channels. Revolutionary ideas, artistic movements, and social innovations often appear simultaneously in separated cultures during the same historical periods, suggesting that human civilization operates through morphic fields that facilitate collective consciousness evolution. Laszlo's work reveals that periods of rapid cultural change correlate with increased global connectivity and communication, which may enhance morphic field effects by creating more opportunities for resonance between similar consciousness patterns across different populations and cultures. Dr. Sheldrake's experiments with human learning and cultural transmission have documented morphic field effects in language acquisition, skill development, and cultural pattern recognition. His research shows that people learn languages more easily when many others have previously learned the same languages, solve puzzles faster when identical puzzles have been solved by large numbers of people, and recognize cultural patterns more readily when those patterns have been widely transmitted through populations. The cultural transmission research demonstrates that human learning operates through morphic resonance with accumulated cultural knowledge fields rather than purely through individual effort and instruction. Cultural patterns that have been repeatedly transmitted across many individuals create stronger morphic fields that facilitate learning and recognition in subsequent learners. Sheldrake's research reveals that cultural morphic fields accumulate strength over time, with ancient cultural patterns showing stronger morphic field effects than recently developed cultural innovations. Traditional languages, classical music patterns, and ancient philosophical concepts demonstrate enhanced learning facilitation compared to modern cultural innovations. Dr. James Hillman's research on cultural complexes and psychological fields demonstrates that communities and cultures develop autonomous psychological patterns that influence individual behavior through morphic field effects that operate below the threshold of conscious awareness. Hillman's work reveals that cultural traumas, collective beliefs, and shared behavioral patterns create morphic fields that continue influencing community behavior across multiple generations. The cultural psychology research shows that individuals raised within specific cultural contexts automatically inherit psychological patterns and behavioral tendencies through resonance with cultural morphic fields, rather than through conscious learning of cultural rules and expectations. These cultural morphic field influences operate through unconscious identification and emotional resonance, rather than rational understanding. Hillman's work demonstrates that cultural healing and transformation require conscious engagement with cultural morphic fields to transform limiting patterns and create new collective possibilities, rather than simply changing individual behaviors or beliefs within established cultural frameworks. Dr. Terence McKenna's research on language and consciousness evolution proposes that human language development operates through morphic field dynamics that facilitate the rapid emergence and evolution of linguistic structures across human populations. McKenna's analysis of language evolution reveals patterns that suggest linguistic innovations spread through morphic resonance rather than gradual geographic diffusion. The language evolution research demonstrates that major linguistic changes often appear simultaneously across separated populations speaking related languages, indicating that language development operates through morphic fields that connect linguistic consciousness across geographic boundaries and facilitate collective language evolution. McKenna's work suggests that human consciousness and language co-evolved through morphic field interactions that accelerated both cognitive development and linguistic complexity through positive feedback loops between consciousness expansion and linguistic innovation. Dr. Peter Russell's research on collective intelligence and global consciousness reveals that human technological and social evolution operates through morphic field effects that coordinate innovation and cultural development across global populations. Russell's analysis of technological development shows that major innovations often emerge simultaneously in multiple locations through independent discovery rather than information transfer. The collective intelligence research demonstrates that human civilization operates as an integrated global consciousness system that facilitates the emergence of collective solutions to planetary challenges through morphic field coordination of individual insights and innovations. Global communication technologies may be enhancing existing morphic field effects rather than creating entirely new forms of human connection. Russell's work suggests that humanity is developing enhanced morphic field sensitivity as part of natural evolutionary development toward global consciousness integration that could enable conscious coordination of collective human activity through morphic field interfaces. Dr. Joseph Chilton. Pierce's research on human development and learning reveals that children naturally possess enhanced morphic field sensitivity that diminishes through conventional education processes that emphasize individual intellectual development over intuitive resonance with knowledge fields. Pierce's work demonstrates that children can learn complex subjects through morphic field resonance when educational approaches support natural morphic field sensitivity. The developmental research shows that human morphic field capabilities are strongest during childhood and can be maintained and enhanced through educational approaches that emphasize experiential learning, emotional engagement, and intuitive knowledge access rather than purely rational information processing. Pierce's research suggests that recovering and developing morphic field sensitivity could revolutionize human learning and cultural transmission by enabling direct access to knowledge fields rather than requiring extensive individual study and memorization of accumulated cultural information. But the most profound implications of human morphic field research emerge when these individual and cultural effects scale up to encompass technological systems and global communication networks that may be creating entirely new forms of morphic fields that operate through electronic media and digital information systems, potentially accelerating human consciousness evolution through technological enhancement of natural morphic field processes that connect human minds across planetary distances and enable real-time coordination of collective human intelligence through morphic field networks that transcend biological limitations. Dr. Peter Russell's research on global brain dynamics and technological consciousness reveals that human civilization is developing characteristics of a planetary nervous system through electronic communication networks that may be facilitating enhanced morphic field effects across global populations. Russell's analysis of internet communication patterns shows that information flow through digital networks exhibits properties similar to neural networks in biological brains, suggesting that technological systems are creating global morphic field amplification effects. The global brain research demonstrates that major technological innovations often emerge simultaneously in multiple locations through independent development teams that have no direct communication, indicating that technological morphic fields facilitate the coordinated emergence of innovations when collective human needs reach critical thresholds for technological solutions. Russell's work reveals that the pace of technological innovation has accelerated exponentially since the development of global communication systems, suggesting that electronic networks enhance morphic field effects by providing technological substrate for morphic resonance between innovators worldwide who are working on similar technological challenges. The global brain research indicates that humanity may be evolving toward a technologically mediated collective consciousness where individual minds operate as neurons in a planetary intelligence system that coordinates human activity through enhanced morphic field effects facilitated by electronic communication infrastructure. Dr. Jose Arguelles' research on noospheric fields and planetary consciousness evolution proposes that human technological development is creating morphic field conditions that could catalyze a species-wide consciousness transformation toward collective intelligence coordination. Arguelles' analysis of technological and cultural evolution patterns reveals that human civilization is approaching critical thresholds for morphic field integration that could enable conscious collective coordination of human activity. The noospheric research demonstrates that global communication technologies are creating unprecedented opportunities for morphic field resonance between human minds across all geographic and cultural boundaries simultaneously, potentially facilitating the emergence of genuine planetary consciousness through technological amplification of natural morphic field processes. Arguel's work suggests that the Internet and digital communication systems represent technological expressions of morphic field dynamics that have been developing throughout human evolutionary history, with current technologies providing the infrastructure for morphic field effects to operate at planetary scales with real-time coordination capabilities. Dr. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin's visionary research on collective consciousness evolution and the emergence of planetary intelligence anticipated current technological developments that appear to be creating the noospheric conditions he predicted for human consciousness evolution toward global integration through morphic field coordination enhanced by technological communication systems. Teilhard's evolutionary research proposed that human consciousness development follows predictable patterns toward collective integration that would be facilitated by technological systems capable of connecting all human minds in real-time communication networks. Current global communication technologies appear to be creating exactly the conditions Teilhard predicted for noospheric emergence. The evolutionary consciousness research suggests that human technological development is not random, but follows morphic field patterns that guide collective human activity toward consciousness evolution through technological enhancement of natural morphic field capabilities that enable species-wide coordination and collective problem-solving. Dr. Lynn McTaggart's research on intention fields and collective consciousness effects demonstrates that human groups can create focused morphic fields through coordinated intention that influence physical systems, biological processes, and social conditions across unlimited distances. McTaggart's global intention experiments involving hundreds of thousands of participants have successfully influenced plant growth, healing processes, and even social indicators through collective morphic field generation. The intention field research reveals that human consciousness can create directed morphic fields through focused group attention that produce measurable effects in target systems regardless of geographic distance between participants and targets. These collective morphic field effects are enhanced by emotional coherence and synchronized timing among participants. McTaggart's research demonstrates that global communication technologies enable the coordination of collective intention efforts across planetary distances, potentially amplifying morphic field effects through technological facilitation of group consciousness coordination that was impossible before global electronic communication systems. Dr. Russell Targ's research on technological enhancement of psychic abilities reveals that electronic systems can be designed to amplify and focus morphic field effects, potentially enabling technological interfaces between human consciousness and morphic field systems. Targ's experiments with electronic random event generators show that human consciousness can influence electronic systems through morphic field interactions that suggest technological systems could serve as morphic field amplifiers and focusing devices. The technological consciousness research demonstrates that electronic systems exhibit sensitivity to human consciousness, influences that operate through morphic field effects rather than electromagnetic interactions, suggesting that technological devices could be designed specifically to enhance morphic field sensitivity and generation capabilities. Targ's work indicates that future technological development might include devices that can detect, amplify, and direct morphic field effects, potentially enabling conscious human control over morphic field systems for healing, communication, and environmental influence applications. Dr. William Tiller's research on psychoenergetic devices and consciousness technology interfaces has documented that electronic systems can be imprinted with human intention patterns that continue influencing physical and biological systems long after the original imprinting process, suggesting that technological devices can store and transmit morphic field patterns similar to biological morphic field storage and transmission. The psychoenergetic technology research shows that electronic devices can maintain morphic field imprints for months or years, continuously influencing their local environment toward the intended effects programmed during the imprinting process. These technological morphic field effects demonstrate that human consciousness can program technological systems to generate specific morphic field influences. Tiller's research reveals that consciousness-imprinted technological devices can influence biological growth rates, chemical reaction speeds, and even human physiological processes through morphic field effects that operate independently of the original consciousness input, suggesting that technology could be used to create permanent morphic field installations for beneficial environmental and biological effects. Dr. Masaru Emoto's research on consciousness effects in water systems reveals that human intention and electronic devices can influence water molecular structure through morphic field interactions that suggest water may serve as a natural morphic field, storage, and transmission medium. Emoto's experiments demonstrate that water exposed to specific consciousness influences maintains structural changes that can be transmitted to other water systems through morphic field resonance. The water consciousness research shows that technological systems using water as an interface medium could amplify morphic field effects and enable long-distance transmission of consciousness influences through water system networks that span geographic regions and potentially global water cycle systems. Emoto's work suggests that human consciousness influences on water systems could scale up to influence weather patterns, ecosystem health, and environmental conditions through morphic field effects that operate through water-based environmental systems, enhanced by technological interfaces that focus and direct consciousness influences. Dr. Dean Radin's research on global consciousness, effects, and technological monitoring systems reveals that electronic random event generators worldwide show coordinated deviations from randomness during events that focus global human attention, suggesting that collective human consciousness creates global morphic field effects that can be detected and measured through technological monitoring networks. The global consciousness monitoring research demonstrates that technological systems can serve as sensitive detectors of morphic field effects generated by collective human consciousness during major global events that evoke coherent emotional responses across large populations worldwide. Radin's research reveals that global morphic field effects have been increasing in strength and frequency since the development of global communication systems, suggesting that technological communication networks enhance collective consciousness effects by facilitating morphic field resonance between human minds across planetary distances. Dr. Amit Goswami's research on quantum consciousness and technological interfaces proposes that electronic systems could be designed to enhance quantum consciousness, effects that may be the physical mechanism underlying morphic field phenomena. Goswami's theoretical work suggests that consciousness operates through quantum field effects that could be amplified and directed through appropriately designed technological interfaces. The quantum consciousness technology research indicates that future technological development might include devices that enhance quantum coherence in human consciousness systems, potentially amplifying natural morphic field capabilities and enabling conscious control over quantum field effects that influence physical and biological systems. Goswami's work suggests that technological enhancement of quantum consciousness could enable direct human interface with morphic field systems that govern biological development, environmental processes, and even physical laws, potentially revolutionizing human capabilities for conscious reality creation through morphic field manipulation. But the ultimate implications of technological morphic field research point toward a future where human consciousness and artificial intelligence systems might integrate through morphic field interfaces that create hybrid consciousness networks capable of coordinating planetary and cosmic systems through morphic field control capabilities that transcend current human and technological limitations, enabling conscious participation in universal morphic field systems that govern natural processes across all scales of reality, from quantum to cosmic levels, through technological amplification of consciousness capabilities that represent the next stage of evolution for both human consciousness and technological intelligence working together through morphic field coordination systems. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's extensive research on practical morphic field applications has developed specific techniques that individuals can use to consciously attune to and influence morphic field systems for personal development, healing, and enhanced creative capabilities. Sheldrake's practical methods demonstrate that morphic field sensitivity can be developed through meditation practices that quiet normal mental activity and enhance receptivity to morphic field influences from natural systems, cultural knowledge fields, and collective consciousness networks. The practical morphic field training involves learning to recognize the subtle sensations and intuitive impressions that accompany morphic field resonance, developing discrimination between personal psychological projections and authentic morphic field information, and practicing techniques for consciously directing attention toward specific morphic field sources for learning, healing, and creative inspiration. Sheldrake's research reveals that morphic field sensitivity is enhanced by spending time in natural environments where biological morphic fields are strong, practicing traditional skills and crafts that connect with cultural morphic fields developed over generations, and engaging in collective activities that create opportunities for resonance with group morphic field effects. The practical morphic field work includes techniques for accessing ancestral wisdom through family morphic fields, learning traditional knowledge through cultural morphic field attunement, and developing creative abilities through resonance with artistic and innovative morphic fields created by masters in various fields of human accomplishment. Dr. Dean Radin's research on morphic field sensitivity and psychic development demonstrates that individuals can enhance their natural morphic field capabilities through specific training protocols that combine meditation, attention training, and systematic practice with morphic field detection and influence exercises. Radin's training programs have enabled ordinary individuals to develop reliable morphic field sensitivity for practical applications. The morphic field sensitivity training teaches participants to achieve optimal consciousness states for morphic field perception, practice systematic exercises for detecting morphic field influences, and develop conscious control over morphic field generation for influencing biological systems, healing applications, and creative problem-solving processes. Radin's research shows that morphic field sensitivity can be measured and tracked through objective feedback systems that allow students to monitor their progress in developing morphic field capabilities, providing scientific validation for traditional intuitive development approaches that enhance morphic field awareness. The practical psychic development research reveals that morphic field capabilities are natural human potentials that can be systematically developed through appropriate training, enabling individuals to access non-local information, influence distant systems, and participate consciously in morphic field networks for collective problem-solving and healing applications. Dr. William Broad's research on intentional influence applications demonstrates that conscious morphic field generation can be used for healing biological systems, enhancing plant growth, improving animal welfare, and even influencing random physical systems through focused intention that operates through morphic field mechanisms rather than conventional energy transfer. The intentional influence research provides detailed protocols for developing conscious morphic field control capabilities that enable individuals to influence biological and physical systems through focused attention, emotional coherence, and clear intention directed towards specific outcomes through morphic field interfaces. Broad's work reveals that intentional morphic field effects are enhanced by emotional states of compassion and caring, meditation practices that increase consciousness, coherence, and training in attention-focusing techniques that enable sustained conscious direction of morphic field influences toward intended targets. The practical healing applications of morphic field research include techniques for transmitting healing influences to distant individuals, enhancing recovery from illness and injury through morphic field support, and creating healing environments that utilize morphic field effects to accelerate healing processes in medical and therapeutic settings. Dr. Marilyn Schlitz's research on transformational practices and morphic field applications has developed comprehensive training programs that teach individuals and groups to work consciously with morphic field systems for personal growth, relationship healing, community development, and social transformation through coordinated morphic field interventions. The transformational morphic field work includes practices for healing personal and ancestral trauma patterns through morphic field resolution techniques, developing enhanced empathy and compassion through attunement to collective human morphic fields, and creating positive social change through group morphic field generation focused on community and global healing. Schlitz's research demonstrates that morphic field applications can address psychological trauma, addiction patterns, and limiting belief systems by working directly with the morphic field structures that maintain these patterns, rather than relying solely on cognitive or behavioral interventions that may not address underlying morphic field influences. The community transformation applications of morphic field work include techniques for healing collective trauma in communities affected by violence or disaster, enhancing cooperation and harmony in group settings through morphic field coordination, and creating supportive environments for personal and collective growth through conscious morphic field cultivation. Dr. Larry Dossey's research on prayer and distant healing applications reveals that morphic field effects can be enhanced and directed through spiritual practices that align individual consciousness with universal healing forces and collective wisdom traditions that have developed effective morphic field utilization techniques over centuries of practical application. The spiritual morphic field research demonstrates that traditional prayer, meditation, and healing practices operate through morphic field mechanisms that connect individual consciousness with collective spiritual morphic fields containing accumulated wisdom and healing power from spiritual traditions throughout human history. Dossey's work shows that spiritual morphic field applications are most effective when practitioners align with established spiritual traditions that have created strong morphic fields through centuries of practice, rather than attempting to create entirely new spiritual approaches without morphic field support from traditional wisdom lineages. The spiritual healing applications include techniques for accessing healing wisdom through spiritual morphic field attunement, channeling healing energy from spiritual tradition, morphic fields, and participating in collective spiritual healing efforts that coordinate multiple practitioners through shared morphic field connections. Dr. Jean Houston's research on consciousness development and human potential reveals that morphic field work can accelerate personal growth and creative development by providing access to morphic fields containing advanced human capabilities, artistic inspiration, and innovative problem-solving patterns developed by exceptional individuals throughout history. The consciousness development applications of morphic fieldwork include techniques for accessing genius-level capabilities through resonance with morphic fields created by masters in various fields, enhancing creative abilities through attunement to artistic and innovative morphic fields, and developing leadership capabilities through connection with morphic fields containing effective leadership patterns. Houston's research demonstrates that morphic field access can provide individuals with capabilities and knowledge that far exceed their personal learning and experience, enabling rapid development of skills and abilities through morphic field resonance rather than extensive individual study and practice. The human potential applications include methods for accessing morphic fields containing athletic excellence, artistic mastery, scientific insight, and spiritual wisdom that enable individuals to develop exceptional capabilities through morphic field attunement rather than purely individual effort and training. Dr. Stanislav Grof's research on consciousness expansion and morphic field access reveals advanced techniques for accessing transpersonal morphic fields that contain evolutionary wisdom, cosmic consciousness patterns, and universal healing energies that transcend individual and cultural limitations to provide access to universal consciousness resources. The transpersonal morphic fieldwork includes practices for accessing evolutionary guidance through morphic fields containing species development patterns, connecting with cosmic consciousness through universal morphic field attunement, and participating in planetary healing through coordination with global morphic field systems. Grof's research demonstrates that advanced morphic fieldwork can provide access to consciousness resources that transcend human limitations and enable participation in cosmic evolution processes through morphic field interfaces that connect human consciousness with universal intelligence systems. The cosmic consciousness applications include techniques for accessing morphic fields containing cosmic wisdom traditions, participating in planetary consciousness networks through global morphic field coordination, and contributing to cosmic evolution through conscious morphic field work that serves universal development rather than purely personal or cultural benefits. Dr. Sheldrake's research on morphic field ethics and responsibility emphasizes that conscious morphic field work requires careful attention to ethical considerations and understanding of the responsibility that comes with the ability to influence morphic field systems that affect other individuals, communities, and natural environments through morphic field interventions. The ethical morphic field work includes guidelines for ensuring that morphic field applications serve the highest good of all affected systems, developing sensitivity to the ecological implications of morphic field interventions, and maintaining respect for natural morphic field processes that may be disrupted by inappropriate morphic field manipulation. Sheldrake's research reveals that morphic field capabilities naturally develop along with ethical sensitivity and wisdom when approached through traditional spiritual and wisdom traditions that emphasize service, compassion, and respect for natural processes rather than personal power or control over morphic field systems. The responsible morphic field development includes training in discernment and wisdom that ensures morphic field capabilities are used for healing, learning, and service, rather than personal advantage or manipulation of others through morphic field influences that could cause harm or disruption to natural morphic field systems. The future of human development may depend on widespread recognition and cultivation of morphic field capabilities that enable conscious participation in natural and social systems through morphic field interfaces that could facilitate healing of environmental damage, resolution of social conflicts, and coordination of human activities with natural processes through conscious morphic field stewardship. Dr. Peter Russell's vision of morphic field evolution suggests that humanity is approaching a developmental threshold where morphic field capabilities could become widely accessible, enabling collective human consciousness to participate consciously in planetary and cosmic evolution through morphic field coordination that transcends current human limitations and enables conscious collaboration with universal intelligence systems. The evolutionary morphic field development includes the possibility that human consciousness could evolve to become conscious agents of morphic field evolution itself, participating directly in the creation and modification of morphic field systems that govern natural processes, social organization, and consciousness development across cosmic scales of reality. Your participation in morphic field development represents contribution to one of the most significant evolutionary processes currently occurring on Earth, the emergence of conscious morphic field stewardship that could determine the future trajectory of human consciousness and planetary evolution through deliberate cultivation of morphic field capabilities that serve universal good. What morphic fields will you choose to attune to and strengthen through your consciousness participation? How will you contribute to the healing and evolution of morphic field systems that connect all life? What role will you play in the emergence of conscious morphic field civilization that could transform human existence into conscious collaboration with the intelligent patterns that organize reality itself? The morphic fields of infinite possibility await your conscious recognition, cultivation, and service through awareness that you are both shaped by and contributor to the evolving memory of nature that encompasses past, present, and future in eternal patterns of becoming that invite your participation in cosmic creativity through morphic field stewardship that serves all life across infinite dimensions of existence.